kindly administer the oath of allegiance to the new senators. It is not you.
I, Jacqueline Burns, do swear that I will bear, sorry, may I put on my glasses? I, Jacqueline Burns, do swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as senator and do the right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to Belize and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as a senator and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
Congratulations to both of you, senators, and welcome to today's sitting.
Announcement by the President.
Today, on day 12 of the 16 days of activism, you and me from 16 to 365, End Violence Against Women Now, I express my full support and commitment to the Women's Leaders Declaration. This declaration established a commitment and call to action to the progressive realization of women's rights by women leaders across 100 women-led organizations and institutions. It underscores the critical importance of women's leadership and collaborative partnership between and among women to address issues of gender equality, equity, and women's empowerment within and across government ministries, private sectors, and civil society organizations. The parties to this declaration wholeheartedly share in the vision to advance the achievement of de jure and de facto gender equality and equity in Belize. The result of this will be the continued addressing of the root causes of gender-based violence, advancement of women in education, and the empowerment of participation in leadership across all disciplines at the national and subnational levels. I encourage all women leaders of Belize to sign on to this declaration. Honorable members, by letter dated the 3rd December 2021, Cabinet's recommendation has been signified to the following. 1. General Revenue Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022, number 2 Bill 2021. 2. Customs and Excise Duties Amendment Bill 2021. And 3. The Belize Bank Limited Undertaking, Belize Bank Corporation Limited Operations Vesting Bill 2021.
Bills brought from the House of Representatives.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to take charge of the following bill. General Revenue Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022, number 2 Bill 2021. Customs and Excise Duties Amendment Bill 2021. Belize Bank Limited Undertaking, Belize Bank Corporation Limited Operation Bill 2021. Certified Institutions Children's Reformation Repeal Bill 2021. Juvenile Offenders Amendment Bill 2021. Families and Children Amendment Bill 2021. Patents Amendment Bill 2021. Trademarks Amendment Bill 2021. Law Revision Amendment Bill 2021. And Sugar Industry Amendment Bill 2021. Madam President, in accordance with Standing Order number 49, I move that the bills be taken through all their stages forthwith.
Honorable members, the question is that the bills be taken through all their stages forthwith. All those in favor, kindly say aye.
Aye.
Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Papers.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to lay on the table Sessional Paper 16/1/14, Social Investment Fund Audited Financial Statements for the year ended March 31st, 2021. 17/1/14, the 19th Annual Report of the Contractor General, February 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. And 18/1/14, Supplementary Appropriation Number 2, scheduled for fiscal year 2021-2022.
Honorable members, those papers are ordered to lie on the table.
Statement by Minister.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, with your leave, I wish to make a statement on immigration in Belize. And with your leave, I wish to read from my notes.
So proceed.
The government has decided to offer an amnesty for Central American and CARICOM nationals who are residing in Belize illegally. Those who qualify for the amnesty will be offered permanent resident status with a path to citizenship. It is important for the Belizean people to understand the reason for this decision. Over the past decade or so, there has been a significant increase in migration, both legal and illegal, throughout the world, the Central American region included. Migrants refers to persons who have changed his or her usual place of residence. This definition therefore covers persons who are legal as well as illegal. But Madam President, the figures of movement of migrants are staggering. According to the World Migration Report 2020, and I quote, "The current global estimate is that there were around 281 million international migrants in the world in 2020, which equates to 3.6% of the global population." The report continues, "Overall, the estimated number of international migrants has increased over the past 5 decades. The total estimated 281 million people living in a country other than their own country of birth, was 128 million more than in 1990 and over 3 times the estimated number in 1970. Migration to North America is a key feature in Latin America and the Caribbean region. In 2019, over 26 million migrants had made the journey north and were residing in North America. The 2020 report continues. Several countries in Latin America and the Caribbean have undergone considerable population change over the last decade. All the top 20 countries experienced an increase in the size of their populations during this period, with the largest proportional population changes occurring in Central America. Belize had the greatest percentage change, with its population increasing by 24% from 2009 to 2019. It was followed by Guatemala and Honduras, whose populations grew by nearly 23% and 20% respectively. End of quote. Madam President and colleague senators, the reasons for the explosion in migration are varied and complex. The economic, political, and social situations prevailing in Venezuela, Colombia, Nicaragua, Haiti, and countries in Africa and Asia have contributed to millions of nationals leaving their countries and moving into South and Central America. Millions of people have moved north, whether in caravans or individually. As a result, the United States of America, Mexico, Colombia, and other countries in the Americas, along with international agencies, have reacted with varying measures and plans seeking to stem the avalanche of migrant flows. Speaking specifically about Belize, it is clear that most of the migrants who have settled in Belize are from the neighboring republics, with increasing numbers from Haiti, China, not Taiwan, and Africa. Migrants from Central American republics are, in the main, fleeing gang-related violence and seeking employment opportunities. Migrants from Haiti are fleeing political-related violence, ungovernability, and economic opportunities, whilst those from China are primarily seeking economic opportunities. The 2010 census by the Statistical Institute of Belize found that 14.2% of Belize's population was born abroad. However, this percentage does not begin to reflect the number of undocumented migrants who moved to Belize during the past 2 decades. The SIB does not have any statistics of the number of undocumented migrants in Belize. Therefore, accurate projections of social assistance, losses in tax revenue, increasing social impacts, and unbalanced access to social services are impossible. The Belize Refugee Department, with the support of the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, has been responsible for registration and processing of asylum cases in Belize. The registration system shows that there were 4,104 persons registered to claim refugee status. However, less than 100 have been confirmed as refugees, resulting in over 4,000 with an asylum seeker status. This Honorable Senate will recall that earlier this year I reported that the UDP administration had unlawfully halted the processing of refugee applications, causing a tremendous backlog of cases. We are addressing this problem by adopting several measures. Madam President, Senators, Belize has had 2 amnesties. The first was in late 1984, where 8,680 undocumented migrants were registered. Many of these persons are now lawful citizens of Belize. 15 years later, in 1999, another integration exercise resulted in granting approximately 11,168 persons, newly registered migrants, permanent residence. Madam President, yet another exercise was planned for 2010, when officials in the government estimated that over 20,000 undocumented migrants were expected to be registered. Unfortunately, that amnesty never occurred. This is important. In 2010, more than 10 years ago, officials estimated that more than 20,000 migrants were residing illegally in Belize. It is against this background that we must address the reality of the present-day immigration crisis. Whilst some of the migrants have since 2010 regularized their status, it is believed that many more have entered the country and have an irregular immigration status. Using the figures from the 2 amnesties and the 2010 estimate, the Ministry of Immigration estimates that the number of irregular migrants in Belize in 2021 is between 40 to 60,000 migrants. This rough estimate is also shared by international organizations. Madam President, I emphasize that this is an estimate. However, we do know that 10 years have passed since 2010, when the estimate was 20,000, and we know that many, many more have settled in Belize. Irregular migration breeds illegality and abuse. Many migrants find themselves victims of human trafficking, modern-day slavery. Irregular migrants, because of their vulnerability, are often employed at very low wages and work in dreadful conditions. Additionally, many are paid, quote, off the books, end quote, and therefore generate little tax revenue. Some of the migrants are gang members or former gang members and engage in serious criminal activities in Belize. However, many migrants have children in Belize and enter relationships which lead to complications. For example, there are families where both or one parent is irregular, but the children are regular. That is, they were born in Belize. Registering the children in school exposes the parents, and there is a tendency not to enroll them. Of course, many irregular migrants access social and other services and therefore add to the cost of service delivery. That said, Madam President, I wish to emphasize that migrants, whether irregular or not, contribute positively to the Belizean economy. They work in many sectors of the economy, and many operate small and micro businesses, contributing to economic activity and employment. The Ministry of Immigration believes that it is propitious to implement an amnesty program that will offer permanent resident status to undocumented migrants residing in Belize, leading eventually to citizenship over an extended period of time under the conditions that require that they continue in regular status. On the recommendation of the Ministry, Cabinet has approved the following criteria to be used for persons to qualify for application for permanent residence under the amnesty. A, registered asylum seekers. B, irregular migrants who have resided continuously in Belize before 2010. C, irregular migrants who have Belizean children born prior to 2020. D, irregular migrants who have completed primary and or secondary education in Belize and continue to reside in Belize. E, irregular migrants who are married to Belizeans for at least 1 year. F, irregular migrants who are in common law unions with a Belizean for a continuous period of 5 years or more. G, irregular migrants who are recommended by the Ministry of Human Development. And H, irregular migrants who have maintained gainful employment in Belize for at least 5 years. I emphasize, Madam President, that the provision that says recommended by the Ministry of Human Development seeks to address a very discrete and small number of cases. The Ministry of Immigration has been informed by the Ministry of Human Development that there are quite a number of children in Belize without their parents who are in institutions, and they have no way of identifying who their parents are or where their parents are. And these children are kept at the institution until they reach the age of majority. What we propose is that on the recommendation of the Ministry of Human Development, we would consider giving permanent resident status and therefore some identity to these children. It would not be wider than that. In order to implement this amnesty, Madam President and Senators, there is a requirement for legal adjustments and financing. Legislation will be passed to govern the process, and therefore it will come back to the Senate. The amnesty is planned to begin in April 2022 and will have a 4-month registration period and a 6-month post-registration period for a total time frame of 10 months. It is proposed that an electronic solution be provided for the special branch of the Belize Police Department in order to streamline the process, not to create a bottleneck in processing. 3 registration sites per district with 1 registration officer, 2 registration clerks, and 1 security guard will be rolled out to receive applications. 50% of the personnel hired to execute the registration period will be retained to execute the post-registration, and 1 central office will be created, which will be responsible for the independent processing of all applications accepted during the registration period. Madam President, the Ministry of Immigration has prepared all the documents which will be required to support applications. These documents will ensure that only those who strictly comply with the criteria and the law are able to successfully apply for amnesty. A comprehensive budget for the amnesty has been prepared and will be finalized shortly and submitted for approval. The Ministry has engaged international organizations such as the International Office of Migration, and we have every confidence that their expertise and budgetary support for the amnesty will be forthcoming. The IOM, for itself, has applauded this proposed amnesty and offered it expert advice. The IOM has undertaken work in 2020-2021 through its migrant resource centers and migrant hubs and provided assistance to more than 2,000 migrants residing in Belize. This, Madam President, is the tip of the iceberg. Madam President, we wish to emphasize that the underlying purpose of this amnesty is to regularize thousands of persons residing in Belize illegally and to bring them into the official mainstream of Belizean society. These are persons who have made Belize their home. We believe that we should take steps to make them legal. Once legal, we will be able to have a more accurate count of our population. We will have more accurate statistics for social, economic, and migration planning and policies. Let me be clear. Persons who successfully apply for the amnesty will be given permanent residence, not citizenship. To qualify for citizenship, they must have permanent residence status for 5 years and satisfy other legal criteria before they become Belizeans. Madam President, the Ministry will this week begin its briefing and consultations with ministries and stakeholders who will be involved in the amnesty. Beginning in January, a massive information and education campaign will be rolled out to inform potential applicants of the amnesty and to familiarize the wider Belizean population with the details. The proposed amnesty is consistent with our sustainable development goals as we seek to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger and have sustainable cities and communities and reduce inequalities. The amnesty is also in keeping with the Global Compact on Migration, pursuant to which all countries committed to cooperate internationally to facilitate safe, orderly, and regular migration. In conclusion, concluding, Madam President, we believe that this amnesty is necessary at this time. In fact, it is overdue. All measures will be taken to ensure that only persons who duly qualify will be allowed to register and only upon proof of required documentation. Once this amnesty is concluded, the Ministry of Immigration will insist on stricter compliance with the immigration laws and scale up its enforcement mechanisms. Madam President, before taking my seat, I wish to comment on one matter that relates to the Ministry of Immigration. Last week, the President of the Public Service Union, Mr. Dean Flowers, launched a scurrilous, baseless, and untrue attack on public officers who are members of his union. He did this on the Uncut program aired by Channel 7 television, which was hosted by Mr. Jules Vasquez. Mr. Flowers alleged that there was a connection between the officers of the Immigration Department who visited Bolivia and Peru earlier this year to provide passport services to Belizeans resident in those countries. Mr. Flowers has since apologized. Mr. Vasquez and his television station have also apologized. Madam President, colleagues, I deplore in the strongest possible terms this baseless attack on public officers. Mr. Flowers knew then that what he said was untrue. It was uncalled for, and it was unfair. None of the public officers involved had any opportunity to defend themselves in that television program. The apologies forthcoming from Channel 7 and from Mr. Flowers are not enough. There are many people who heard the program but are unaware of the apologies and believe that what Mr. Flowers said is true. It is a blatant lie. The fact of the matter is, Madam President and members of the Senate, the Ministry hereby explicitly states that the immigration services provided to Belizeans and foreigners are not related to the narcotics trade. Further, the Ministry categorically denies that the services provided to Belizeans, and I emphasize Belizeans, living in Bolivia and Peru were not tied to the narcotics trade. The fact is that when the service provided in Bolivia was for 1,100 applications. It took place between the 10th of February 2021 and the 2nd of March 2021 and generated $98,189.73. In Peru, 142 applications between the 12th of November 2021 and the 23rd November 2021, generating $11,850. The revenue collected revenue collected from the applicants and all expenses were paid by the applicants. That includes the cost of travel, hotel accommodation, and per diem. I can assure this Honorable Senate that all protocols, financial and otherwise, were strictly complied with and all funds have been accounted for. Just for the sake of completeness, it is important for me to point out that this was not the first time that such a program was undertaken. In 2012, the Immigration Department made a trip to Mexico where approximately 25 applications were dealt with between the 23rd of October 2012 and the 26th of October 2012. In 2016, the Immigration Department made a trip to Dubai, where approximately 50 applications were dealt with between the 2nd of May 2016 and the 7th of May 2016. The point is very simple, Madam President. Where there are large congregations of Belizeans, where there are no consular services available to them, from time to time, organized by the Belizeans, making a request of the Immigration Department, a mission is undertaken to provide renewal of passports, not the granting of nationality or any such thing. It is strictly renewing passports for Belizeans in places where the services are not available. As indicated last week, we intend to carry out further missions next year, particularly in the United States, because of deficiencies in the equipment in the consulates and in the embassy. Let me conclude, Madam President, by thanking all members of staff of the Ministry of Immigration who work diligently to serve the public and to enforce our immigration laws. I also record my thanks to those officers who conducted these overseas missions professionally and with integrity. We praise them, we do not libel them. I thank you, Madam President.
Motion relating to the business or sitting of the Senate.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that at its rising today, the Senate adjourn to a date to be fixed by the President.
Honorable members, the question is that at its rising today, the Senate adjourn to a date to be fixed by the President. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, government business, motions.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that whereas Section 3.1 of the Loans Caribbean Development Bank Act, Chapter 74 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, provides that subject to such conditions as may be agreed between the government and the Caribbean Development Bank, the government may borrow from the bank from time to time such sums as may be required by the government. And whereas Section 3.2 of the said Act further provides that no agreement in respect of the sums borrowed under the powers conferred by Section 3.1 shall be executed unless the terms and conditions thereof have been further approved by a resolution of the House of Representatives to that effect. And whereas the bank has offered to lend the government of Belize US $2.5 million from the bank's special funds resources. And whereas the purpose of the loan is to assist the government of Belize in financing the emergency restoration of critical public infrastructure following damages caused by the passage of Hurricane Eta on the 4th and 5th of November 2020 and by Hurricane Iota on the 16th and 17th November 2020 in Belize, and consultancy services to provide independent inspection and certification of the works. And whereas the loan is being offered on the following terms and conditions: A, US $2.5 million from the special funds resources to be repaid in 52 equal or as nearly equal and consecutive quarterly installments of approximately $48,077 United States currency on each due date commencing 3 years after the date of the loan agreement. B, interest at the rate of 0.75% per annum to be paid quarterly on the amount of the principal withdrawn and outstanding from time to time. The loan shall be fully disbursed by the 30th November 2022, or such later date as the bank may specify in writing. Now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied that the project will assist the government of Belize in defraying the cost of restoring damages to critical road drainage and bridge infrastructure in Belize, Corozal, Cayo, and Orange Walk districts caused by the passage of hurricanes Eta and Iota in Belize in November 2020, approves and confirms that the government may enter into a loan agreement with the Caribbean Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said agreement and all other documents associated therewith. Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied that the project will assist the government of Belize in defraying the cost of restoring damages to critical road, drainage, and bridge infrastructure in Belize, Corozal, Cayo, and Orange Walk districts caused by the passage of hurricanes Eta and Iota in Belize in November 2020, approves and confirms that the government may enter into a loan agreement with the Caribbean Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said agreement and all other documents associated therewith. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that whereas the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas was adopted by a conference of plenipotentiaries in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on the 14th May 1966 and entered into force on April 1st, 1969. And whereas the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas was developed for governments to cooperate in maintaining the populations of tuna and tuna-like species of fish at levels which would permit their long-term conservation and sustainable use for food and other purposes. And whereas Belize acceded to the convention on July 19, 2005, thus becoming the 41st state to join the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, established under the convention. And whereas the Commission is the body established by the Convention for the Conservation and Management of Species under its purview, and whereas the Commission has the mandate to adopt recommendations that are binding on contracting parties, which includes Belize, as a signatory to the Convention. Belize is a full member of the Commission and enjoys fishing rights, participates in decision-making process, and enjoys voting rights. And whereas the Commission established a Convention Amendment Working Group in 2010 with a mandate to develop proposals to modernize and improve the effectiveness and strengthen the conservation and management of species under its purview. And whereas the Convention Working Group produced a new protocol to broaden the scope of the Convention by explicitly including ELASMO branches, and thus providing the Commission with a comprehensive and firm legal basis for their protection. And whereas on November 20, 2019, Belize signed the protocol to amend the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas during the 26th regular meeting of the Commission, which took place in Palma de Mallorca, Spain. And whereas ratification of the protocol will permit Belize to demonstrate its ongoing commitment to the conservation and sustainable use of global fishing resources, as well as further demonstrating Belize's leadership role in the protection of the environment and careful husbandry of natural resources consistent with government's policies. And whereas ratification of the protocol will further demonstrate Belize's commitment to the continued sustainable management of species regulated by this Commission and our dedication to the prudent use of high seas fisheries resources. And whereas Section 61A(2)(a) of the Belize Constitution provides that the Senate shall authorize the ratification of any treaty by the government of Belize, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable Senate, being satisfied that the ICAT protocol will permit Belize to demonstrate its ongoing commitment to the Convention and sustainable use of global fishing resources, as well as further demonstrate Belize's leadership role in the protection of the environment and careful husbandry of natural resources consistent with government's policies, and in doing so, being in the public interest of Belize, hereby authorizes the government of Belize to ratify the protocol to amend the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, which was first signed by Belize on November 20, 2019. Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, that motion is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to move the second reading of the bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st March 2022. Madam President, the bill is short and it is complemented by the sessional paper to which I referred earlier. It seeks to comply with the provisions of the Finance and Audit Reform Act and the Constitution, which requires legislative approval for spending by the executive.
I recognize Senator Michael Perfit.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I think it would be helpful for us to understand in plain English and bad manners what a supplementary appropriation is. The government comes out with a budget in March for the fiscal year to go to the following March. But life happens, and sometimes things that are not anticipated come up, and you have to come back to the National Assembly for more money, in plain English. So I budgeted $100 for human resources, and during the year I realized I need $20 more. So I come to the National Assembly for $20 more. What you would expect, Madam President, and I got into some trouble for praising the Minister of Finance the last time, you know, the titular, substantive, de facto, in real Minister of Finance, so they take away. When you budget, Madam President, say $100, and you come back and you say you want another $5 or another $7, you can understand that you could be off. Contingencies, this is reasonable. But when you come back, you budget for $100. You come back and say, I want $25 more. Then there is something wrong with your budgeting, and you're not anticipating what you may or may not need, or you better come up with a good explanation as to what requires you to divert from your budget in such an extreme fashion. Especially, Madam President, we came here in October. Oh, that was a point of order, sir. You're quite enough. We came here, Madam President, on October 25th with a supplementary. Now, we're coming back here December 6th with another supplementary. So what the government is telling us, Madam President, is that in October, they anticipated they needed more money than they had budgeted for to take them to March 2022. So we have to assume that when you bring a supplementary budget in December, you are saying that something happened. Something happened between October 25th and today to make you believe that you need more money that you didn't anticipate that you needed in October. The government has to explain the urgency. And I know that there is a law in terms of the percentage of the budget that you can ask for in a different supplementary. But then, when you add it all up, this government did a budget of, for example, $100. And before the end of the year, they're coming back asking for an additional $50 to $60. For what? That means that at the time of making the budget in March, there was no real planning by this government. This government, they feel away. This government doesn't know what it's doing, because there is no way, if you plan your budget properly, you need to bring a supplementary in October and then bring one right back in December for some of the very same things in December. What are you doing? Why are you asking for monies now that you couldn't ask for in October? What special set of circumstances have occurred or taken place that you couldn't anticipate that you would need this? Madam President, right from the beginning, the Court of Appeal, personal emoluments, they need another $156,000. You didn't know that in October? Have there been new Court of Appeal justices sworn in between October and now and have to be paid now that we didn't anticipate in October? We didn't know that. Why budget for that now? Ministry of Public Service, rent and leases. The approved estimates is $6.2 million. You're asking the National Assembly to approve from between now and March an additional $1.8 million. That's just under 1/3 of your total budget. You didn't know that in October? What new has to be rented so for the remainder of the financial year for $1.8 million? What new space has been created that wasn't there in October, that occurred between October and now, that you have to rent and ask the people of Belize for $1.8 million? What? Director of Public Prosecutions, personal emoluments again, $228,426. Did we get some new crowns? Did we get some new prosecutors? Who are we paying? And didn't we know that we were getting these people in October? We just realized since October 25th, barely more than a month ago, Madam President, barely more than a month ago, we just realized we need more money for that. It goes on. Madam President, you have the Ministry of Finance, public utilities. You need $12 million between now and March 2022. And I think I heard the Prime Minister said that this is for street lights or something like that, repairing or, but then you didn't know that in October? You didn't know that? How come you just know that? How come you didn't know that in March? This is a major project, $12 million. There is no excuse. You have to explain to the Belizean people, how come you just know you need $12 million for that? And then maintenance costs for CETA. CETA still get maintained. $232,977, Madam President, in October 25th, when we came here barely a month ago. Barely a month ago. CETA's maintenance cost was $960,634. So then you asked barely a month ago, barely more than a month ago, for $960,000 plus, and less than 2 months after, you require $232,000 more? For what? What has happened that you didn't anticipate October 25th? What has happened? Didn't CETO know they would need this $230,000? Why didn't you ask for it then? One eye water and done. Why do you need to bring another supplementary? What was not anticipated that you have to deal with now? Madam President, Ministry of Education, they have fair scholarships, training. Is it training for scholarships? Is it to train people to get scholarships, or is scholarships training, or what? $3 million between now and March 22? 3 million, no, sorry. That's, no, sorry. $1.584 million for training, $1.584 million. Now the budgeted approved estimate is $1.8 million. So you budgeted $1.8 million up to March 2022 in March, total. But yet in December, less than 4 months before the end of the budget cycle, you come and you ask for $1.5 million. What are you doing? You don't anticipate these things, and clearly, like I said, you have to explain why you didn't know you needed $1.584 million for education in October. Why? How come you didn't know that? How come you know that all of a sudden? What has happened to make you come back to the people, to ask the people for more money? And maybe I'm just excited, Madam President, but I see a Ministry of Health and Wellness for $3 million. Well, you have to give the Ministry of Health and Wellness credit, you know. They just tell them, give me money. They don't tell you that for what? Just run it. You have to give them the testicular fortitude to say, listen, we don't have to explain to you anything more, just give us the money. Madam President, prison services, Ministry of Home Affairs, contracts and consultancies. The approved estimate is $4.299 million. The government is saying that between now and March 2022, they need $1.5 million. That's like about, you're asking for 25% on top of a budgeted estimate with less than 3-4 months to go. What consultancies you need and what contracts you need to sign, you didn't anticipate in March of 2021, or worse yet, didn't anticipate just 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, you didn't know you would need this. The prison just told the Ministry of Home Affairs that it needs $1.5 million. Really? Lack of planning. This government is feel away, and you don't know what you're doing. Madam President, it goes on. AG's ministry, personal emoluments was $781,000 for the year. So you need $147,000 more for the next 3-4 months. For what? And why didn't you ask for this in October? What has happened in less than 6 weeks for you to realize you need that? And you notice a trend, Madam President. Personal emoluments. Marina Creole explained to me that are pay, that people pay, that you pay. You have to consider this in the context of people who have been cut, had their salary cut by 10%. You're telling them you can't give them 10%, but yet you're adding to the wage bill. There is hardly a segment, there's hardly a line item for a ministry that doesn't have personal emoluments, because they're finding jobs for their people, whether they need it or not. And you're telling current public officers, we can't pay you, let's suffer together while you hire more people. For what? For what reason? What do you need to hire somebody for till the end of the financial year that you didn't know you needed to hire them in October? And since you had such a great plan, streamlining, and you're making sure that this is this and this is that, how come you didn't know this in March of 2021? How come now you're doing personal emoluments again all over? That is for AG's ministry. Ministry of Youth, Sports and Governance, operating costs, training. The budget was 7,000. Now you're asking for 6,000. Like 90% of your budget. Why? Why? Why you need almost 90% of your budget for only 3-4 months left in the year? Why? And how come you didn't know you would need this training and this operating cost in October? You didn't ask for it. But as a matter of fact, Madam President, you see, this is what I don't understand. In October, they asked for training, $142,000. In October, they asked for public utilities, $6,000. They asked for contracts and consultancy, $118,000. So why in 6 weeks you need another 6,000, another 1,000? For what? Why didn't you do that in October? Why no? Madam President, Ministry of Blue Economy, this government, man, to give the people the blues. Appropriate, the blues. But when it used to be BLUE, now on the BLU, when I drop the E. Like you know what the E used to stand for that when I drop? Empathy. I have no empathy. You're telling people that they can't get their 10%. But yet, the Ministry of Blue Economy and Civil Aviation, all they're asking for, Madam President, personal emoluments, $70,000 till March 2022. Who are they hiring for $70,000? And why do they need people when you're to cut people pay? You're cutting people's pay and hiring other people. How do you think the morale will be for those people who are currently working? You cut me pay because you said we don't got no money. But then you turn around and hire more people. And then not only that, you need to hire more people and bring in a special budget just for March 2022. What happened in October, between October and now, that you need $70,000 for the Ministry of Blue Economy? What special circumstances have occurred to make you say, well, I never knew about that in October. Something come up, and we need it in December to go to March. Those things don't fly with people. Madam President, well, for the legislature, Madam President, no. National Defense and Border Security, the approved estimate for materials and supplies was $4,254,123. But yet, now that was the budget so far. That was the budget for the year, you know. $4,254,123. But yet, you come in December. You come in December and say, from just now till March, I need $2,524,000. More than half your budget. What has occurred? Did we get an intake of 1,000 more BDF soldiers? Huh? What has occurred? No, you don't give a chance for that, man. Tell us. That's what we have here. You need $2.5 million. More than half of what you needed from just March to now. And you tell the Belizean people, who don't got no money to pay them. Legislature. Purchase of computers, at least this one, never 13,000 like the last Home Affairs one, Madam President. It's only 7,000. But we're not quarreling with the legislature. Legislature never get nothing, no. So we will support that. Yes, man. Ministry of Health and Wellness. So the line item, Madam President. They said I want COVID-19. $2 million. Now, what you want to spend that on? What you want to do with that? What you want to buy? What you want to pay? At least the other ones, they said, we could hide only consultancy. Consultancies and training. I always could hide things there. Well, Ministry of Health and Wellness, Madam President, afraid for you. COVID-19, 2 million, run it. We don't even tell you that for what? We don't even bother put training or consultancy or tests, just $2 million. The notice I skip office at the Prime Minister, trying to save that one for last. Ministry of Natural Resources, Land Development Acquisitions, $2 million. Money the right time, man, this is the paper what they give you. $2 million. So the supplementary estimates, the wrong thing I read from, Madam President. So the one they give you. $2 million. We need $2 million for between now and March. When you just came in October and asked for millions, you never know you may need 2 more. Ministry of Human Development, Families and Indigenous Peoples Affairs. Food assistance, $1 million. Look like the minister decide some people need some dandan for true. All of a sudden now you believe in food assistance. All of a sudden the PUP believe in a pantry and food assistance and economic assistance. You cut that thing off, you know. But all of a sudden now Christmas to come. So your budget and $1 million. You have the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing. I like how they put it, Madam President. Halover Bridge, $1 million. Caracol upgrade, $1 million. Then purchase of other equipment, $2.5 million. What other equipment? Which other equipment does the ministry need between now and March 2022 that you didn't know you needed in October? You just discover something? What is the inspiration to need that? Madam President, let me go to the office of the Prime Minister. Why? I see something that the PUP said I never believed, you know? I didn't know that the PUP supported Christmas chair. I never know that. When did you start to support that, Senator? When did you start to support Christmas chair? Because you see, October 25th, they came here and put in the budget, October 25th, you know, Madam President, less than 6 weeks ago, you know, Constituency Development Fund Program, $3.5 million. $3.5 million. You figure, well, they realize they want that. They want to help the constituencies. You may say to yourself, well, CDFs are not are not alien to the Commonwealth, the parliamentary system. But then, you come in December 6th, and Constituency Development Fund, again, support. They call it support. So I don't really want fun, Madam President. You see, either October 25th, they call it Constituency Development Fund Program. Man, it sounds nice, man. In this one, they say Supplementary Constituency Development Support. $3.1 million. 3,150,000. Man, what that about Christmas tree? Man, listen, nothing is wrong with Christmas tree, you know, because we believe that the people need the support. But you said you didn't like this kind of thing. You said you didn't like this. And here you are, budgeting for Christmas tree. It is our hope that the people who need it are going to be the people who get it. But it is important to point out to you on hypocrisy. Minister of Infrastructure used to cry bloody murder when things like this used to come up. But he now have no issue to collect $100,000. Come, Madam President, somebody can get 150. But when you come with $3.1 million for 31 constituencies in the country, it's $100,000 per constituency on average. Unless some will get more than others. But somebody will get 150 at least. You cannot do this, Senator Montejo. You cannot do this and then tell people that you don't have enough money to give them back their 10%. You cannot do this to people and then tell people that the government doesn't have the ability to absorb some of the tax part of the rise in fuel, Senator Montejo. You cannot do this to people. The people who put you there, the people who you said, who you told, you will be different. The people of this country, when you look at supplementals like these, they voted for heaven, but you've given them hell. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Osmani Salas.
Right. Thank you, Madam President, and welcome to my colleagues on the other side. My colleague before me, presented a very comprehensive list of questions, and I have quite a few of those, and I won't repeat them because the questions have been asked. I have asked my own questions in preparation for this meeting. I reached out to a few ministers, and I received some responses, but I look forward, before the debate closes, for the government side to respond to some of these questions for the record. And as we know, and as we've said several times, a supplementary appropriation bill is a money bill. No matter what we say or do or how we vote, this is passing. But it doesn't stop us from asking the key questions. And my colleague before me asked a lot of the ones I was going to ask. And I won't be repetitive, but there's one I want to go back to. I want to go back to...
Kindly have your seat, Senator. You may proceed.
Oh, did you? Sorry, I didn't see you. I didn't see you get up. Yeah, but I want to go to one in particular, and it's the one my colleague just ended with, the supplementary constituency development support. And yes, I was going to point out, and I will again, I will repeat, that in October, $3.5 million was approved. I know we are at $3.15 million. So if these funds are equally divided among all the 31 representatives, it amounts to just under $250,000 each. That's a lot of money in these hard times, but also in these times that requires fiscal restraint. It's a lot of money. So the The question I want to ask in relation to this is, what are the safeguards in terms of accountability and transparency mechanisms? And I remind us of what the government committed to in January of this year in the good governance motion that we very happily and gladly supported. And in relation to constituency development support, and I'll quote from the motion, Madam Speaker, it says, implement the Constituency Development Fund to enable elected representatives to be proactive in supporting grassroots development initiatives in the country. Establish the fund, which means that there would be mechanisms in place to administer the funds, transparency, accountability mechanisms, and keep in mind, I'll repeat this every chance I get, we now have a joint public accounts committee. We are gearing up to do our work. It will be a whole lot of work. The Prime Minister pointed out in no uncertain terms that he has advised his ministers that they better be on the ball. They better be on the ball because the JPAC, even the Senate here, can call any minister, CEO, government official to question them and to show us how these monies are being expended or have been expended. This is our duty, this is our responsibility, and I just use this as one example. Right? I won't go through everything that is there. I must say that some of the responses I got for some of my other questions sounded reasonable. And one of those is KHMH. KHMH, we know, has put a lot of their resources out there. They do not turn away. They do not turn away anyone. They would see patients from the other regions, and it's a huge toll on them. So, as I've been told, it's the plan to repay them some of that money, and I can understand the importance for that and the need for that, and why that needs to be done. But coming back to this point about constituency development, it's been 13 months, I think, since the elections, and we would have hoped that by now the Constituency Development Fund would have been established. So I strongly encourage the government to set up that fund with all its mechanisms, because yes, people are in need and we want to help them. And yes, we want to ensure that those who are in most need are the ones who receive the support, and that we don't do this looking at party political colors, but at the need. And if mechanisms that will ensure accountability and transparency are not there, how can we say how those monies were spent if they went to where it needed to go? How can we say that, right? So I just reiterate that, Madam President, and I end my comments on this by stating and encouraging government to set up the CDF. It is desperately needed. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Elena Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. Please just allow me, Madam President, to wish our clerk a happy anniversary today. Happy wedding anniversary to him and his wife.
He did not tell us, Senator.
Yes. And so we wish them many more years together. Clerk, thank you so much. Madam President, I am not going to be long either like my colleague, because my colleague on the other side has really and truly gone into what we would have raised anyway. But I must say, Senator Perifit, I agree with you. I fully agree with you, if that makes it better. For us, Madam President, when we look through this supplementary, for example, and we look at these personal emoluments, as my colleague said, my goodness, this is a slap in the face to us, those of us who had to sacrifice. We had no choice. Despite we did not agree, we had no choice. And yes, we have been thanked for that sacrifice that we made, because our sacrifice has enabled the government to get rid of the super bond. Nonetheless, Madam President, almost, I won't say almost all, but many of these additional funds here, we see personal emoluments. Again, no explanation. We have repeatedly requested that when we get these sort of things, that we get sufficient details, that we don't have to come here and ask these questions, and then we get responses, and in giving responses we are being scolded. Oh, they are homework and you must read and you must do this, and what can I read if I don't get it? I don't have it, so I can't read it. And so we have to be fair with all of us here, because I will tell you, and I keep saying it, I can speak for us from the union. There is no time when anybody calls us to give us any additional information. And so we can only go by what we have here. And so it's unfortunate, as my colleague said, that we were here October and we are here again. And when we look at the amounts that we are approving again, it really and truly begs a lot of questions. We can only hope, Madam President, that this is not going to be how we are going to be operating going forward. Because if it is that we have to come here October and then we come again in December, and it's like every 6 weeks we are coming, we are really and truly not doing what we are to be doing. And so we often expect a lot of other people, and we often criticize, when people are not being accountable and transparent. And again, I must say, we have a government who came on the platform of accountability and transparency. And we are not seeing that the way we expect that should be seen. And so I must implore, we must implore from the Trade Union Congress perspective, that we ensure that just as the cries were prior when my colleagues on this side were over the other side, and our colleagues on the other side now keep saying, provide sufficient information, provide details. Let us ensure that we provide those details. And when those details are not provided and we come here and we ask questions and we make comments, that we are provided with the responses because, and in a manner that we understand that is the right thing to do, but not provided with responses in a way that is sometimes have come across as scolding, demeaning, and whatever other word we want to use. This before us, Madam President, really and truly tells a lot. At a time like this, when our people are going to be going through some more difficult times, and we know that we say January, the MAGA season is going to be worse for our people. We are purchasing vehicles, we have monies for emoluments, but what will happen to us? As my colleague rightly said, 10% gone. Is that coming back anytime soon? Are we going to be looking at that the way we are looking at these supplementary? And so my plea once more, Madam President, is that we do our utmost best to avoid having to bring supplementary with these amounts. I'm not saying that it may not happen, but the amounts that we have in here, noting that we were just here in October, should not be happening regularly. And I hope that this matter is going to be rectified and that we can be provided with sufficient details, not wait until we get here to ask the questions to then get those details, that we can be given those details, that when we come here, we are fully aware of what all of these things really and truly mean, that we don't have to be questioning in this manner. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Kevin Herrera.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, my comments will also be very brief. To begin with, I'd like to the recurrent and the capital 2. Then, like my colleague before me said, I think Senator Perry-Feet went through many of the details that I as well perhaps would have raised. But if you look at the line item that is under recurrent, we're looking at a 31% increase. For capital 2, again, for the items that are listed in capital 2, we're looking at a supplementary increase of 48% for those items. Now, I imagine, in fact, I'm sure that there are many areas I think that government sees a need to spend more on. It could well be that they were over-ambitious in March in terms of the estimates. But yet, still, I must remind the Senate that we came here in March willing to make certain sacrifices. I supported the budget that was presented in March, even though, you know, it really, it was very difficult for me personally, as I had mentioned in March, because it required a 10% cut of our fellow, of our union brothers and sisters. And so that was very difficult for me. But I also felt that there was a significant need to tighten things because we were in really, we were in a really bad situation. And so I want to continue encouraging the administration to let's keep this fiscal discipline going. We really need to keep it going. And the area that I would like to zero in on to make my point there is on the Constituency Development Fund, I believe it's called. We're looking, if you add October and the supplementary in October and the one in December here, you're looking at I believe 6.5 increase or 6.6 increase, I believe. $6.6 million increase in supplementary. In my view, Madam President, I think that type of allocation, and if you look at the one for December, it's the second largest line item increase in the supplementary, 3.5 million, I believe. But I believe a lot of that is partisan political work in these constituencies. And like I said, if we made a lot of sacrifices in March. I voted to support the budget back then with the understanding that we would have been making these sacrifices. In my opinion, putting $6.6 million in the Constituency Development Fund for October and December is a bit much. If you take an average of that 6.6 million over between October and March of next year, and let's say we average it at 4 months, you're looking at $53,000 per constituency per month for those 4 months. If we average it at 4 months, that's a lot of money to put into the control of the area representatives in those areas. Now, I'm really hoping, and this is extremely important to me. I understand that for at least this allocation here, the monies would be paid directly to suppliers for the type of work or outreach that will happen in these constituencies. But I'm also hoping that we will go one step further and the final recipients of any of these benefits, for those that we would have signed vouchers, signed receipts, so that these things can be audited, because it's putting $53,000 out there per month, per constituency for the next 4 months. And we would hope that the final recipient, we have some documentary proof of what these monies are being used for, who are receiving them, so that, again, when we look at these things in a JPAC later on, that we would be able to go, through each of these constituencies and be satisfied that these monies, and these are taxpayers' dollars we're talking about, that they were spent properly, that they were spent appropriately, and they meet the conditions that are required. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Bishop Moses Bengushe.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, as I share this morning, I want to perhaps take up some of the things that the independent senators have raised this morning, and perhaps as much as they have raised it, there is need for emphasis. And the first that I would like to deal with is just what we have been talking about on this side, the independent senators, the Constituency Development Fund. I recalled it was in October that I stood here and I asked the question about the expenditure aspect of this fund, and to make sure that as it is given out, that there is the level of accountability insofar as this aspect is concerned. I'm still not totally satisfied that we have seen enough of that, and yet we come back and we're asking again that more funds be expended in this area. I'm gravely dissatisfied insofar as this aspect is concerned. I join the union representative in reminding us that the government had asked that public servants take a 10% cut. To date, we have had no discussion insofar as when it will be or if it will be returned. And yet, we come and we are talking about constituency and adding to the Constituency Development Fund. And not only that, as mentioned, that the emoluments tabled is another aspect. And so while I might be reiterating what was said, I think it is important for emphasis that I also share this aspect. Madam President, it is not good enough. And as I said, as we look at all the emoluments that are tabled this morning, this afternoon, there is cause for concern, and I will leave it there.
Question report.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day of March 2022 be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
The bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day of March 2022.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to move a second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48 of the Laws of Police, Revised Edition 2011, to rename the tariff column headed EPA with EPA UK, to implement the 8th phase of the reduction of duties in accordance with the CARIFORUM UK EPA, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, this is a straightforward bill. All it seeks to do is to, because the United Kingdom left the European Union, we had to enter into a new economic partnership agreement between the European UK and the CARIFORUM. And therefore, what this does is to bring that into force with the appropriate amendments to the schedule, the tariff schedule. Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48 of the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to rename the tariff column headed EPA with EPA/UK to implement the 8th phase of reduction of duties in accordance with CARIFORUM UK/EPA, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
The bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duty Act, Chapter 48 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to rename the tariff column headed EPA with EPA UK, to implement the 8th phase of reduction of duties in accordance with the CARIFORUM UK/EPA, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to move a second reading of a bill for an act to provide for the vesting in the Belize Bank Limited of certain business in Belize of the Belize Bank Corporation Limited, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Again, Madam President, this is a bill that has come before the Senate, a similar type bill. The public will know that the Belize Bank Limited bought, I believe, the Bank of Nova Scotia Belize Limited, or Scotia Bank Belize Limited, and the successor company is Belize Bank Corporation Limited. This bill is in the usual form to do all the legalities and formalities that are required to complete that transaction. Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill for an act to provide for the vesting in the Belize Bank Limited of certain business in Belize of Belize Bank Corporation Limited, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to provide for the vesting in the Belize Bank Limited of certain business in Belize of the Belize Bank Corporation Limited, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Indulgence. The next three bills are dealing with the same topic, and if you agree, I would like to take them together.
You may so proceed.
Much obliged. Madam President, I rise to move the second reading of a bill for an act to repeal the Certified Institutions Children Reformation Act, Chapter 121 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. And a bill for an act to amend the Juvenile Offenders Act, Chapter 119 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to repeal the provisions that relate to status offenses and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. And thirdly, a bill for an act to amend the Families and Children's Chapter 1, Act Chapter 117, 3 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to substitute the term approved children home with the term residential care facility in order to ensure consistency with its use in those laws and to refer to residential care facilities, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize Senator Osmani Salas.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise, Madam President, to give my full support to the 3 bills, one being a repeal and the other 2 being amendment bills. As stated in the bills, the Certified Institution Children Reformation Bill 2021 changes, or the change there is Social Services Agency to replace Certified Institution. In the Juvenile Offenders Amendment Bill 2021, it's for the term Residential Care Facility to replace Certified Institution. And similar with the Families and Children Amendment Bill 2021, it's for the term Residential Care Facility to replace Approved Children Home, and Department of Human Services to replace Community Rehabilitation, and Department of Human Services, sorry, and Community Rehabilitation Department, which replaces Department. So it's long overdue, as Minister of Human Development pointed out in the House last week. These changes are long overdue, and we are glad that they are taking place. But to conclude, I just want to point out, though, that in our view, the issue should be more than just name changes. And what is needed, Madam Speaker, is a fundamental change in the approach and treatment of children and juveniles by policymakers and personnel implementing the program. So thereby shifting from an earlier approach which tends to be accusative and punitive to one that is more humane and rehabilitative. So we support the changes, but we look forward to more fundamental change that is needed. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Jacqueline Burns.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support the 3 bills, but with a commentary, please. Initially, I want to talk about the certified institutions. I'm quite aware that we're changing, like the good senator said, the title of the institutions and how we refer to them. But I call on the government to review the detention facilities, because indeed we have children in some of these institutions that have non-criminal offenses. And it is a recommendation that instead of housing them in the detention centers, that we consider having them do community service and the like as a form of punishment and hopefully rehabilitation for them to come back into society and contribute to what we call our lovely Belize. We also want to look at where we can provide support to our young people in terms of counseling, guidance programs that would be there to offer them an alternative to lifestyle on the streets, to include sports. And I was happy to hear that the supplementary budget looked at sports and training, and I'm hoping that in that light, we're looking at these particular young people who are out on the streets and in difficulties where they might need that sort of support, and that the finances are taken directly to that direction. In the book like Bushfire by Howard Gale, research done on Belize and our disenfranchised young people, one of the recommendations that came from the young people themselves is that there isn't enough opportunities in terms of education and in terms of programs that they would want to be a part of. And so the streets become more temptation because it offers something for them to do, especially in the time where our young people are restricted in their movements, in not being able to socialize as much in schools and other such institutions. We need to provide an outlet for these young people because their energies are high. In some months during the pandemic, they weren't allowed even to play sports. And so we need to look at how we can support our juveniles, keeping them away from becoming offenders. I also want to point out that under the UDP, there was a community rehab development that was established to support our young people. And while this program needs some sort of legal formation and backdrop, our courts are saturated with cases and where we need that the policies be put in place, I believe that this sort of reform would give our young people an alternative to getting themselves involved in criminal activities. And so I would like to implore on the government also to look at the education rules. In the education rules, when a student commits an offense, the school has the right to decide whether or not they would expel or suspend that student. And in some cases, the young people are left out of school for a long period of time and therefore not feel invited to come back to school. And so we need to partner with the parents involved, the social services, to look at how we can meet to resolve that issue with the juvenile offenders, the student, and using the education rules to be able to work our way around how we allow them back in school, but also with the condition that they face some sort of reprimand for whatever offense they may be charged for. Also, Madam Speaker, I want to talk a little bit about our children. If we build a Belize that is safe for our children, we build a Belize that is safe for every citizen of this beautiful country. And so when we talk about our children, we want to talk about those babies who are at home with single moms from broken families. And they go through the family court system and monies are being contributed for these young people. And there's difficulty for the mothers to access these sort of funds that come in on their behalves, and it takes an extended period of time. I would like to see the government pay some attention to that matter because I have heard numerous complaints from the single moms who are there wanting to feed their babies. Also, let's look at child labor. A lot of our students...
Senator, I will just ask you to try to bring it back to the bill.
Yes. So these are some things that I want for the government to look at in details when we're talking about our children, our families, to make a better Belize for us. Thank you.
I recognize Senator Erica Jang.
I rise to support the three legislations that was submitted by the Honorable Dolores Balderramos Garcia, the Minister of Human Development, Families and Indigenous Peoples Affairs. I begin with looking at children in a whole, youth. Nobody's perfect. And because they are not perfect, we need to be prepared to correct their imperfection, or at least to help to be able to guide them into the right direction we want them to go. These three legislatures talk about supporting our youth and our children to make sure that they can do a wicked comeback, like what most of them would say, to make a turnaround and to be able to better prepare their lives for the future. Madam President, most of the times, as a teacher, when sitting in the classroom, I observe students with what we call disruptive behaviors. Another teacher might say, you know what? Send that child outside. Another teacher might call that child to discuss and to find out what the problem is. And then when you find that problem, you will realize that maybe that child was given a particular problem because of something that had influenced him or her earlier. And when that happens, better decisions are made to correct that child's behavior and to allow him or her to grow. And this is what these legislations are doing. They are going to build wonderful children for our beliefs. They are going to build wonderful children for our home. There is no better way to put it. And I'm sure that my colleague on this side have also expressed some of the same encouragement that this bill is going to do for our children. Making sure that they are developed, looking at the rights of children, making sure that they exist within the community, finding a balance with the family and the institution so that these children can grow. Madam President, the children are the future of this world. They are the future of our beliefs. They are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And I believe that supporting this legislation will allow us to have wonderful children in our country beliefs. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Isabel Bennett.
Morning, Madam President. Permission, I congratulate that I congratulate a team of our Belizean youths. They're still children because I believe most of them are still under 18 years old. The Pokatak, I think I pronounced that properly, Belizean team, thank you. Please let us give them a round of applause. They have won the 4th World Cup out there for us. There are several other athletes that have continued to represent Belize, and they're all youths. The Ahmadiyya team that played out in Chetumal over the weekend, they too are coming home with the first place trophy, playing against teams that were in Chetumal. And so even, a round of applause for them as well. And they're coming mostly from the Collet Division, an area that is very troubled, but an area that has a lot of talent. But I introduce all of that to say, Madam President, that I support all 3 bills that were presented. And I want to disagree with you, Senator Salas, because it's just more than a name change. We would have heard time and time again in our Belizean society when we refer to a poor house and children's home, and those names carry a certain stigma. And so when we look at, and we always say as well that if there's going to be change, it has to be in the legislation. And this is one of the first steps towards having to make impactful changes in a small population of our Belizean children that are not coming oftentimes from a best family setting. It's not like they are half of the generation of Belize being affected, but then again with COVID, we might find a lot of these cases coming up simply because of the mental strain, economic strain that COVID has brought to the world. And so I believe, even as an educator, as a nurse, having to simply remove those labels that can stigmatize children even in their adulthood. Because oftentimes I would hear even adults saying, you see, that person in that office, that person had come from the children's home. If we remove those stigma, we will definitely be not blinded anymore, and we will be able to help, like I said, a population of our children that are affected. I believe this is a holistic approach to addressing a myriad of behavioral problems, and it can only continue to get better. Senator Burns, I commend you on the suggestions that you have made. I'm most certain that Minister Dolores and all the other heads of the departments that are going to be impacting programs and children are hearing you. I'm sure those plans are in the pipeline. And so I have personally taken note of what you have suggested. The Convention of the Right of the Child was established in 1989. And I will close by saying, children have a right to share freely with others what they learn, what they think, what they feel, even if they are struggling with behavioral issues. And so I commend Minister Garcia and her team, her ministry, for being visionary in presenting these 3 bills. Thank you.
Madam President, in accordance with Standing Order 10.8, I move that the proceedings on the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour, though opposed.
Honorable members, the question is that the proceedings on the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour, though opposed. All those in favor kindly say aye.
Aye.
Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize Senator Orson Ellington.
Good morning. It's always my honor to represent the people of Belize in this honorable house, but with no disrespect to before, I want to say that it's a distinct honor to appear in front of you, Madam President. I rise in support of these bills. However, I would want to say that it is with some reservation or with some recommendations. I had the distinct honor again of serving as the chairman of the youth hostel. It was actually under the People's United Party government, so that tells you it was some time ago. But I had the honor of serving for the youth hostel for some years. And so I know the myriad of issues which these institutions face. And I know that these legislative changes have been in the pipeline for some time and that they are necessary. But as my colleague just said, that there must be a holistic approach to dealing with the issue of our children. And really and truly, I think this year, more so than any other, we can clearly see that our children are under attack. And there are a number of reasons for that, including, obviously, the pandemic has caused a strain in various areas, not exclusive to only their education. We see that there has been an unprecedented attack on teenagers, a number of them innocently murdered in the streets. And so it is of imperative importance that in dealing with this issue, that we deal with it in a holistic manner. And there is a lot more that can be done and must be done to protect our children. I think my friend mentioned shortly one of the simple, practical things that can and must be done. It is that when we talk about the family court system, we understand that they are under the current procedures that the funds must be deposited with the family court, and many of these children are in dire need of getting these funds immediately. but there are tremendous delays in them trying to get these funds. And therefore, I implore the government to make the necessary changes, make the necessary legislative changes so that the children, because really and truly those are the beneficiaries of these funds. It's not the mothers nor the fathers, it is the children who as the Family and Children Act said, they are the ones who we must consider whenever we're taking any action. And so that is one of the recommendations which I believe must be implemented and must be implemented with some level of urgency, especially considering that we are in the midst of a pandemic. Additionally, again, I had the benefit of consistently interacting with people from the children's home because unlike my friend on this side, the Honorable Perfeet would think, I did used to go to church consistently at Trinity Church, and every single week we would host children from it was a responsibility of the members of the church to host children from the children's home. And so I grew up knowing many of these children, and they become an extended part of our family. And I can't remember who said it, but I can tell you for a fact that I know a number of children who have come through these institutions who are wonderful, productive citizens. Regrettably, the way the system is set up right now, they are the exception rather than the norm, because there are several different issues when they are forced to go through this system, which should not happen. And therefore, again, I know we already spoke about the supplementary bill, but it is important that we properly resource these institutions. I remember when I was at the chairman of the youth hostel, I think they said that it cost us, if I remember correctly, 5 times more for you to house a person at the prison than for you to properly care for someone at these institutions. And yet, we were not provided with the necessary resources to ensure that the children had the proper care, whether or not it is the guidance counselors, the necessary health support, so that these children can be properly taken care of. And so again, I implore the government to ensure that in all we do, it is wonderful for us to have Christmas cheer, for us to have all of these things, but it is imperatively important that we invest our resources in what is the greatest asset in our country, which is our people and our children. Thank you.
I recognize Senator Bevin Cal.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise in support of these 3 bills. And with your permission, I would like to read a page from the Convention on the Rights of the Children. It is on the UNICEF page, and it goes like this. Children must rely on adults for the nurture and guidance they need to grow towards independence. Such nurture is ideally found from adults in children's families, but when primary adult caregivers cannot meet the children's needs, it is up to the state as the primary duty bearer to find an alternative in the best interest of the children. The actions or inactions of government impact children more strongly than any other group in society. Madam President, as a responsible government, I think we need to give more attention to our vulnerable children, whether they're involved in crime, family issues, financial need. I think it is the duty of the state to look after these issues. I believe, Madam President, the 3 bills that is being passed today is doing exactly that. These 3 bills will allow our young people to have a bright future, a future where they can grow, where they can feel safe, and a future where they can become the person they dream to be. We believe that every children in Belize, whether they come from a rich family, a middle-class family, or a poor family, Madam President, should be given the equal opportunity that is needed. The opportunity for them to grow, the the opportunity for them to have the protection and the attention and the care that they need. Madam President, again, I will reiterate that I believe that these three bills are doing exactly that, and I foresee that, with these bills, our children will have a bright future. Thank you.
Madam President, I wish to thank colleagues across the aisle and the independent senators for their positive comments and constructive criticism of the three bills, and I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to repeal the Certified Institution Children's Reformation Act, Chapter 121 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, that the bill for an act to amend the Juvenile Offenders Act, Chapter 119 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to repeal the provisions that relate to status offenses and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, and that the bill for an act to amend the Families and Children's Act, Chapter 173 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to substitute the term Approved Children Home and the term Residential Care Facility in order to ensure consistency with its use in those laws that refer to the residential care facilities, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be all read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to repeal the Certified Institution Children's Reform Act, Chapter 121 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Bill for an act to amend the Juvenile Offenders Act, Chapter 119 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to repeal the provisions that relate to status offenses and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. And a bill for an act to amend the Families and Children Act, Chapter 173 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to substitute the term Approved Children Home with the term Residential Care Facility in order to ensure consistency with its use in those laws that refer to residential care facilities and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I seek your permission again to present the next two bills together.
You may so proceed.
Obliged. I move the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Patents Act, Chapter 253 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the Deputy Registrar of Intellectual Property and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. And I rise to move a second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Trademarks Act, Chapter 257 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the Deputy Registrar of Intellectual Property and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, these two bills are straightforward. The Registrar of Intellectual Property is the Solicitor General, and what they provide under these two bills is for her to delegate on her instructions some of her powers to the Deputy Registrar so that objections to patents and objections to trademarks can be dealt with more efficiently by giving the Deputy Registrar powers to do so. Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Patents Act, Chapter 253 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the deputy registrar of intellectual property and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, and that the bill for an act to amend the Trademarks Act, Chapter 257 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the deputy registrar of intellectual property and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, both be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Patents Act, Chapter 253 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the deputy registrar of intellectual properties and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. The bill for an act to amend the Trademark Act, Chapter 253 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain function to the Deputy Registrar of Intellectual Properties and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Then I rise to move a second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Law Revision Act, Chapter 3 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the electronic publication of the revised edition of the Laws of Belize and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, under the Law Revision Act, it provides for the laws to be published by way of print, which is extremely expensive. And in fact, what has happened is that after they have been printed, they're usually put online, and so nobody or very few people buy the print editions. The proposed amendment is to allow for the published internet version to be legal, and then they will reduce dramatically the amount of hard copies that will be printed.
I recognize Senator Orson Elrington.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise. I think it's progressive and needed. However, I am reminded of the words of Aristotle when he said, at his best, man is the noblest of all animals. Separated from law and justice, he is the worst. And therefore, it is for this reason, while this bill is needed and progressive and applauded and should be applauded, this is not nearly going far enough when we're dealing with the judiciary. Madam President, our judiciary is currently in a crisis. Our judicial and justice system, really and truly, we currently still don't have an integrity commission. We currently still don't have a Belize Advisory Council. We currently still don't have a Chief Justice. I mean, we have a Chief Justice in acting. Why she has not been appointed officially and substantially to the post, I cannot say. She has all the credentials, is eminently qualified. I don't think my learned friend on that side would disagree with me at all, would you? I don't think so. So I cannot understand why she has not been appointed to her as the substantive Chief Justice of Belize. We can hamper many different guesses, but that is not for me to say. But indeed, we are without a substantive Chief Justice. And last but not least, Madam President, we are without a properly functioning judiciary. So while we bring this revision, there are far more important things that need to be done. Right now, we have 6 judges in the Supreme Court. by every independent assessment, and I think every attorney would agree that at minimum, for us to have a properly functioning judiciary, we need double that amount, madam. When we talk about the magistrate court, we might have 10. We need triple that amount. A properly functioning judiciary is a direct correlation to crime and violence. And therefore, it is imperative that we properly resource the judiciary, that we make the necessary legislative changes, the necessary law reviews, so that our judiciary can properly function, so that the innocent do not languish before the court for years, and so that the guilty can be sent to prison. Madam, I don't know if you know or if the Belizean public know that we currently have a situation in the judiciary where week after week after week, persons who are currently on remand for murder are being released, are forced to be released by the judges because their hands are tied, because the time has elapsed, that it would be inhumane and unconstitutional for the persons to continue to be in detention. It is a serious problem, it is a dangerous problem, and it is one which we should treat with the utmost of importance. Madam, it is really and truly an unfathomable state of affairs, unacceptable. We need to get an adequate number of judges, and we need to properly compensate them, both the judges and the magistrates. Currently you have magistrates.
I will, one moment. Senator Ellington, could you kindly bring your comments presentation back to the bill?
Yes, madam. So, again, we are here about law revision. We're talking about law revision, and I would think that all of it is a part of a properly functioning judiciary. But, again, it is my suggestion, it is my plea on behalf of the Belizean people that we properly resource the judiciary. We have a situation where there's 1.5 million.
Senator Urson Ellington, I take your point of order.
Madam President, I ask that the Senator confines his comments to the Law Revision Amendment Bill, which seeks to provide for the publication of the laws online, and nothing more.
Senator, you may proceed. Again, may I remind you to keep your presentation to the bill on hand?
I'm got it, madam. So indeed, as I said, I personally, and we on this side, support the amendment to the Law Revision Act. However, we continue to implore the government to put in the necessary resources so that we can have a properly functioning judiciary. Thank you.
I recognize Senator Zvani Salas.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to wholeheartedly support this bill that seeks to provide for the electronic publication of the revised edition of the laws of Belize. It's long overdue. I congratulate the current administration for taking this step. I speak as a parliamentarian, a legislator, a non-attorney, and I must say that at least since January 2016, I've been very diligent at collecting all my gazettes, compiling all the amendments, all the bills, and I can say I have those to refer to. But anything earlier than January 2016, it has sometimes taken tremendous sleuthing work to find those. So it as a non-attorney, kind of has always put me at a slight disadvantage, and I have sometimes I've had to search long and hard for some of the information. Not everything is available on Google or other search engines. So I am very pleased about this. I fully support it. It's a huge step in the right direction to strengthen our e-governance. And I look forward to other things like this. I mean, I must mention, take this opportunity to commend the staff of the National Assembly. I'm not sure how many of us you check that website, but it's loaded with good information, up-to-date information. I have seen a huge change, and this will further support and complement that. So again, congrats to the administration, and I fully support this bill. Thank you.
Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Law Revision Act, Chapter 3 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the electronic publication of the revised edition of the Laws of Belize, and to provide for matters connecting therewith or incidental thereto, be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Law Revision Act, Chapter 3 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for electronic publication of the revised edition of the Laws of Belize, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to move a second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Sugar Industry Act, Chapter 283 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to clarify provisions in relation to elections of officers of the association, to empower the minister to receive and deal with disputes and complaints, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, the sugar industry of Belize is at an impasse. One is that the Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association and Belize Sugar Industries Limited have not been able to conclude an agreement for the next sugar, well, for longer than the next sugar crop. The existing agreement comes to an end in the middle of next month, and the parties are negotiating, but it seems that there is a bit of an impasse. The second is that there are 3 associations, 2 of which, not the Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association, 2 of which have not held elections of officers. Members of those associations have called for elections, and the existing persons who are holding on to office have refused to call those elections. The purpose of this bill, Madam President and members of the Senate, is to provide an amendment to the law to provide a regime that will address that issue, to ensure that at all times the Sugarcane Farmers Associations, all 3 of them, or if there are more in the future, or less, will always have elections by a time certain, so that you do not have executives holding on to power without a mandate from the people.
I recognize Senator Michael Perfeet.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is unfortunate for me that I get to debate at this most critical and precious hour, but I shall do my best. Madam President, the sugar industry is an essential industry. It has been breathing life, major life, into the Belizean economy for decades. And it is extremely vital. Madam Speaker, if the government wants to tweak laws here and there to make sure that the sugar industry continues to be viable and strong, then how can anybody object to that aspect of it? We know from company law and other private law, there are statutes that dictate when meetings should be held, when different elections should be held, and we have no issue with that being a statutory requirement for the sugar industry. We want it to be working. We want it to continue to provide for the Belizean people. However, Madam President, there's a difference between doing the right thing and doing the thing right. We have a law in place that allows the Sugar Board to deal with the current situation that we have. We have company law that can deal with the situation that we have. But, Madam President, let me go through the amendments. The government wants to have the board, the Sugar Board, arrange the conduct or supervision or both of elections and by-elections of officers of the association and all bodies within the structures of the association. Madam President, previously, that was, if you look at the next section as well, the board is to call elections by October of the relevant year, where the associations have not yet held elections for that year. You want some level of certainty, Madam President, but you also must be very careful that you don't interfere in the workings of the association. You have to be careful that you don't come with this big brother, big sister stick and tell private associations how they are to run their internal bodies. However, as I said, we fully appreciate that the sugar industry is essential. So if you want to make mechanisms be there to say, listen, you have to have these elections by October, just like general elections in Belize. The law is clear when you're supposed to have a general election, a city council election, town board election. Certainty in certain things is critical and key, and we accept that. And the board is being given more power in this aspect, because it used to be it's only if the associations would request the board to become involved with their elections that the board could become involved. But with the new amendments, it is saying that the board will do it. So whether the associations request it or not, the board will conduct their elections. And if you look at the law, we had an opportunity in 2015 to amend the powers of the board, but we believe that the powers of the board are important. So if the government wants to amend the law to strengthen the legislation that we have, we don't have any fundamental issue with that. You want to make elections certain, we have no problem with that. If you want, for example, in the amendment to section 32, you want the association to submit a copy of its bylaws. If you want it to, every amendment of the bylaw submitted to the board and things like that, no problem, Madam President. If you want them, if they fail, there's a penalty that they have to deal with when it comes to failing to inform the board of any changes. No issue with that, Madam President. How can we have an issue with order and structure within an industry, like I said, that we believe is essential to this country? We have no problem with that. An association may make standing orders resulting in its own procedure. Man, listen, they shall file with the board copies of its standing orders and any amendments. In other words, Madam President, what this amendment is seeking to do is to have the board be fully aware of what's going on in the associations. That is not something, you know, Madam President, that is fundamentally a problem. We have a sugar board, and the sugar board should make sure that the sugar industry remains viable So if they want copies of your bylaws, they want to know who are your presidents, who are your vice presidents, I don't think that that should be a secret. I think that information should be provided. But Madam President, PUP can't help themselves, you know. You can't help themselves, you know. This is what the board, and if I may, Madam President, read to you. The board. This is the Sugar Board. This is what the Sugar Board is currently entitled to do, and their powers will become even more, because now it is not if the associations request them to participate in the election. They will have no choice. The Sugar Board will conduct the elections. And the elections are free and fair. What difference does it make who conducts them? But this is the board, Madam President, and I want to read this before I get to my issue that I have with the amendment. There shall be and is hereby established for the purposes of this act a board to be known as the Sugar Industry Control Board, hereinafter called the board, which shall be an autonomous entity governed by the provisions of this act. An autonomous entity. An autonomous entity. The powers that be, past and present, seen it necessary for an industry as important as the sugar industry to have a board that governs it, and that board be autonomous. It's right here. The board may exercise any of the functions entrusted to it by or in accordance with the provisions of this act, or any regulations made thereon, and may exercise any other functions incidental or ancillary to or consequential upon the performance of its principal functions. Man, you're giving the board wide powers and authority, as you should, to make sure that an industry that is vital and essential to the country is managed by an autonomous board. The board shall be a body corporate, having perpetual succession and a common seal, and subject to the provisions of this act, shall have power to acquire, hold, and dispose of movable and immovable property of whatever kind, and into contracts, and do all things necessary for the attainment of its functions and objectives. The board may sue and be sued in its corporate name, and shall for all purposes be described by that name. Which means that anybody that has an issue with what the board is doing, or if the board goes against the functions guaranteed to it by the statute, then the board can be sued, or the board can sue in its own name, because it is, for all intents and purposes, and should be, an autonomous body. The seal of the board shall be authenticated by the signatures of the chairperson of the board and one other member of the board authorized by the board to act for that purpose, and the seal thus authenticated shall be judicially and officially noticed. Man, the board big, man. The board heavy. The board has authority, and the board has a function laid out for it by statute, and it is a beautiful statute that shows that the board controls the industry as an autonomous body away from political interference. The board shall be composed of members appointed by the minister and shall be constituted as provided in section 2 of the section. And once fully constituted, the board shall be the principal policy-making organ of matters relating to the development and control of the sugar industry, including the control and supervision of the various bodies referred to in titles. I'm reading all of this for a reason, Madam President. You saw how powerful the board is? The statute has put the board in control as the boss. People elect people. So the minister will appoint the members of the board like this. A senior official from the ministry for the time being responsible for the sugar industry or his nominee. The CEO, the chief agricultural officer. You're talking about career public servants, technical people. One representative from each of the associations. 2 suitably qualified persons in agribusiness, business and management or finance having no direct connection to the sugar industry, appointed by the minister to the board in his discretion. 1 member nominated jointly by the manufacturers and the association. And the minister shall appoint one of the members of the board to be the chair. Now, senators, that sounds to you like the board needs any help? That sounds to you like the board needs more than what it has been given in law? The board has all the powers in the sugar industry situation that they can conduct whatever they need to do, pass policies, do whatever they need to do to ensure that the sugar industry is viable. This law increases the strength of the board, and we're saying fundamentally to protect the industry and to make sure we have a viable sugar industry. It's difficult to argue with that. Even though it may be a little bit high-handed, it's kind of difficult. But man, we will take a nice warm bucket of milk and PP night. Section 38A. Where a person, this is the law that they want to pass now, Madam President. Where a person is aggrieved by a decision of the board, the person shall refer the complaint to the minister for a decision. So, Madam President, they make her read the whole functions of the board just now for a hungry belly. Only for them to propose a piece of legislation that says all that I've described that the board can do. All of these things that the board is empowered to do, a board that is an autonomous body, all of that they do can be reversed by a decision of the minister. So you go to the board makes a decision, and you don't like it, you just go to the minister. And the minister can reverse that. Other than a decision of the board, so then a decision for the board, that person shall refer the complaint to the board for a decision. Where the board is unable to resolve the matter, it shall forward the complaint to the minister for a decision. So you go to the board for a decision. The board say yes. You complain to the minister say no. The answer is no. If there's anything other than a complaint, and the board can say, this is something that's not for a decision, take that to the minister, and the minister will decide. You have upended the powers of the board. It was you. It was you in your plan beliefs that said you would decrease ministerial discretion and power. It was you. And now you're passing legislation to do just the opposite. You're passing legislation to increase ministerial power. You're passing legislation to have the minister in his personal discretion control the sugar industry. That's what's happening today, Madam President. When it should be with the board. You people are hypocrites and liars. You said you wouldn't do this and you're doing it. Where there's a complaint by a member of an association, or where a dispute arises between a member of the association and that association, or between members of an association, the complaint or dispute shall be reduced to writing and submitted to the board for a decision. In receiving a complaint or dispute under subsection 2, the board may request additional documentation or may request a meeting with the relevant parties to the complaint or dispute. A decision of the board shall, under this section, shall be given within 4 weeks of having received all documentation requested or having met with the relevant parties to the complaint or dispute. Where the board is unable to address a complaint or resolve a dispute admitted to it under this section, it shall refer the complaint or dispute to the minister for a decision. Minister again. You know what will happen, Madam President? The board won't stop work. The board won't stop work. The board will say, what are we going through all of this for? When the minister can just simply reverse us with the stroke of a pen. Or the board will turn around and say, why even waste time do anything indeed? Let's just ask the minister what he wants. Because we will have to do what he says in any event. Madam President, it took about 13 bills to remove Dr. Manzanero. You only take one to remove the board of one of the most significant industries that we have in the country. One section with 2 leap parts. Madam President, taking the decision out of the hands of the professionals when it comes to the sugar industry and putting it in the hands of the minister alone is wrong, makes no sense, and it is quite the opposite of what the PUP said they would do. And for that, Madam President, I cannot support the bill and request, Madam President, upon the last person to debate that we have a division on this matter. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Bishop Moses Bengusha.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, just indulge me very quickly, something that I did not take note of as we started this morning, just to add my own congratulations to my classmate, the clerk of the Senate, and I say my classmate because we have come a long way, and both he and his wife and both my classmates, I think I need to just know that and congratulate them. This afternoon I keep insisting and sharing with him that they have been model classmates, and years ago we observed this couple, and to see how far they have come, I want to pray God's blessings on him and his dear wife. And also it was remiss of me to have welcomed the 2 senators, Senator Burns and my church brother, Senator Elrington, this morning. I welcome you both to the Senate. Madam President, much has been said by the previous speaker earlier, but allow me to just perhaps not to add but to voice some concerns concerning the bill before us. Madam President, it is one that concerns me because I do not claim to be an expert on the sugar industry, but I'm looking at it primarily from a principle perspective. That in a sense, we have to be careful that we do not begin to get ourselves into what is called big government. And in a sense, overreach. It concerns me because earlier, some time ago, as we started not only the whole aspect of dealing with boards, but how it was shared with us that, as was mentioned, how things would run insofar as boards were concerned. It was said then that there would be less control, and in a sense that boards would have the freedom to be able to exercise their powers. I'm afraid that as I look at what is before us, there is need for concern because, as was said earlier, that much power is being placed in the hands of the minister. It was also said that this particular board does have mechanisms in place to be able to deal with certain situations. And if so, then why do we need the minister to be involved at this level? I dare say that I think that the minister would have other things to do insofar as his work is concerned. And what is before us arbitrarily means that it is almost as if though he is or must intervene at every point or at any point that he is called upon to intervene. And as mentioned earlier, that perhaps we have to be careful about that because individual and personal things might just become involved in a part of the decision making. We hope that it would not be so. But in a sense, we must allow boards to be able to exercise independent judgments and operate in an independent way, separate and apart from government itself. We have seen earlier where we thought that perhaps there would have been some intervention insofar as boards were concerned in some earlier debates we would have had, that there was concern that perhaps the government was taking some actions that we thought would best suit the periphery of the individual members of boards. And here we come again, and it is being suggested by what is before us that the minister again should be given certain powers. I believe, Madam President, that in this sense, as I said before, that there are things in place for a board of this nature to be able to take the decisions. And perhaps even if members of the board are dissatisfied with certain items, and perhaps might be dissatisfied with the president of the board or whosoever is chairing the board, that there are mechanisms, or from what I've heard, that there are mechanisms in place and ways in which it can be addressed without the intervention of the government minister. I believe that perhaps tribunals can be formed or might be in place in order to deal with certain things without the intervention of a minister. We have to be careful, as I said, that we're not going in the line of big government. It is not the time and age to have big government. It is the time to be able to streamline and use boards where they best fit, because these are the boards and persons with the professionalism that is required. And I'm afraid that more and more we're going down the line where the government ministers have the authority to be able to make decisions that actually a board should be making. And so I want to say that from where I sit, that as it is and what has been presented to us, it would be difficult for me to be able to support what is before us.
I recognize Senator Kevin Herrera.
Thank you, Madam. Madam President, I've been here. I think this is probably by far the worst piece of legislation I've seen come to us in the Senate. I agree, the sugar industry is an extremely important one. I think it is certainly one that has been one of our staples for a long, long, long time. Even when we didn't have many other industries like tourism, the sugar was always there. But there seems to be an issue, there seems to be a problem. And the problem, from what I've understood, and I think the leader of government business mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, there seems to be an impasse with the manufacturers and an association, not all the association, but an association, at least one. This impasse is really a private disagreement. Then you move beyond the impasse or the problem. And it seems as if the government is proposing to fix this problem by amending the act to conduct and supervise elections. It's extremely difficult for me to reconcile that. Reconcile the conduct and supervision of elections to an impasse between the manufacturers and the farmer and an association. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I'm just not getting the connection. How does this fix it? How does this fix that problem? And the proposal is to fix specific timeline for an election. I think, with the exception of this year, they're supposed to be by October, and then this year would be by December 19th, obviously, because we're already in December. But it doesn't fix the problem. The problem is an impasse between the manufacturer and the association, and I just don't see how this bill addresses that. And even in disputes, Section 16E of the Act, and I'll quote it, says, when requested, and this is in situations where there's a dispute, when requested, the board can be an arbitrator in any dispute, issue, or disagreement arising between the manufacturing and the association. And among other things, this decision shall be final. So the mechanism is there, I believe, through the board to address this issue. In my view, there is really no need for a legislation of this nature. I have many problems with the bill, Madam President. One is, like I mentioned, it doesn't address the core issue. This is really a government overreach. Government is getting into the private affairs of associations. I mean, I come from a chamber background, the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. A long time there, I spent 11 years there. As the CEO there during those times, we conducted many elections, 11 of them while I was there. And not once would we even contemplate. I mean, it's a scary thought that government would have come in and and conduct an election for us. I mean, there's no need. These are private organizations. These private organizations or associations, they have bylaws. These bylaws direct conduct and provide how things should be done, including the conduct of elections. And if the membership at any time have any problems or have any issues or disagreements, then there are several things they can do, including holding those in the leadership position to account. And if that doesn't work, they could take them to court. And so, Madam President, I really want to reiterate this point. The government does, in my view, the government is meddling in the affairs of these private associations. Section 38, again, I have tremendous issues with that. I mean, this really seems to be a power grab, a blatant power grab. And I think my colleague mentioned it earlier, that the board is set up there for certain functions, and he listed many of those in his earlier presentation. But then this is almost like superimposing the minister into this whole thing and giving him all the power. Irrespective of what the board decides, the minister, based on this act, has the ultimate power. Again, I have some real serious issues with that. And so I strongly, Madam President, oppose this bill, and I intend, and maybe I should tell you from now, I really intend that to ask for a division on this. I think it's really getting into, it's really a government overreach, and we should never tolerate this type of thing. Thank you.
I recognize Senator Elena Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise just to make a few comments on this Sugar Industry Amendment Bill. And I would like to associate myself with the comments of my colleagues, Senator Bengushe and Senator Herrera. Madam President, we fully agree, Madam President, that the sugar industry is a critical one for our country. for our economy. And that there have been several issues with this industry. We are all aware of that. We have seen and we have heard, you know, on the news what has been transpiring from time to time. We also appreciate that it is very important that whenever an industry as important as this one has issues, that those issues are resolved as urgently as possible. However, we cannot in any way accept that for issues to be resolved within an industry, an association, that a minister has to have the power to do so. The board is an autonomous board. The board has authority to make certain decisions. The board has several of its members being appointed by the minister. And if I am correct, and somebody will correct me, it would seem that those appointments would be in the majority. So that if it is that the board is having issues and there are issues that can't be resolved, then we are saying that we are going to be putting the minister who would have appointed those persons to come and resolve a matter that his appointees, along with the others, can't resolve. Now, I don't know if that is going forward or backward. It really and truly doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't see how it would make sense to anybody else. The bill speaks to, despite the board, as we know, be autonomous, it says that it shall refer complaints to minister for decision. Then if you want, shall, you have to. And the minister will decide. I am not going to say that we don't need the board, and I don't want it to sound that way. But simply saying, if it is that we are putting this in this bill, then might it be that our government is saying that we don't need the board because the minister will make decisions? And again, I have to come back to what was said earlier. We have been clamoring and we have been assured that ministers would not have as much power as they used to have. But if you are telling me that this board that has majority appointees that you appointed cannot make a decision, then the minister will take over and he is going to do anything, then why make a board and why have it be autonomous? When we look at associations, Madam President, for the most part, these associations have their policies in place and they have their procedures in place. So that should anything happen, you would have a disciplinary procedure, for example, and if that doesn't work out, there's an avenue to appeal. That happens within our unions as well. And so if you have these policies in place, these procedures in place, why do I need a minister who might barely know much about what is happening anyway to come and make a decision? So is it that we are trying to insinuate that the people we appoint can't do their job so the minister must do it for them? I hope not. This bill, Madam President, in our view, will surely be setting a precedent that we don't need. That will not be good for us. Another issue that we have, Madam President, is the matter of consultation. Now, I can be corrected again, but normally when a bill is introduced, Shouldn't there be a process where there is some form of consultation happening? Except if it's urgent, then we may skip that portion. And so, where was the consultation with these parties who would be affected? That is a critical area that is important, because had we done the consultations, we would have heard from some of these same persons, you know, what would be some ways of addressing this matter. So instead of having the minister with all of these powers, the minister, through his appointees, should be assisting the board to be able to resolve the issues that they have. And if it is that they do not have the expertise, then find ways of providing that for them. Not come and take the power to make these decisions. And so I will repeat, Madam President, that while we fully understand the importance of this industry and what it contributes to our country, looking at that portion of this bill, there is no way that the NTUCB is going to support such a bill. I thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Orson Ellerington.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I think that this bill requires us to take a walk down memory lane, or in history. Some Belizeans, and if not all, might remember that at one point in time, there was one association which was embedded in the Sugar Industry Act. And in 2009, the Belize Cane Farmers the United Cane Farmers Association challenged I recall it because my father was the attorney, senior counsel Hubert Elrington. Now, the decision, well, it didn't go to decision. I think that the government yielded at that time to understand that you could not, in compliance with the Constitution of Belize, force persons to be a part of an association. You have the right of association. This is a constitutional right. And so we're here today where now we have a piece of legislation being attempted to pass, and I totally adopt the sentiments expressed by all my colleagues, including the Honorable Michael Perfeet. I did not leave you out like others did. All right? But my colleague, Mr. Herrera, said that this piece of legislation is the worst I have ever seen. And I agree. It is so blatant. It totally spits in the face of our democracy, in the constitutional rights of persons, that I am flabbergasted that they even have the testicular fortitude to even present this bill. We have a situation where the associations, two major associations, who represent over 1,500 farmers, I believe it is, have not been consulted at all. You know what the cane farmers said of this piece of legislation? They said that it is heavy-handed and troubling.
that it does not comport with not even the minimum standards that our Constitution and our democracy demands. So, how then are we here today? Why is this heavy-handed approach being adopted when there are a myriad of alternatives that could be exercised in trying to resolve the issues in the sugar industry? Why? In the plan Belize, indeed, it boasted that there would be a removal of ministerial discretion. Well, that was a lie. That was totally a fabrication, as we have seen many other things. But this one is so bold. It is so in your face. It is so disrespectful that I'm lost for words as to how it is even being tabled today. Indeed, when we look at the act itself, and it talks about the power of the minister, in case you're thinking that what it intends to do is not to further empower and to create a mini dictator. It says it right here, 38A. Power of the minister. And again, it says, and I think it's important that we, for the benefit of the Belizean public, that we read the actual text of these legislations so that they can understand the type of power that the minister is trying to grant unto himself. Where the person is aggrieved by a decision of the board, that person shall refer the complaint to the minister for a decision. My friend, I think last time I was in the house, we had the discussion about the meaning of shall in law. And so I'm happy that you reminded us that shall is not an option. It is mandatory. It means must. If you don't comply, you are in problems. Other than a decision of the board, that person shall refer the complaint to the board for a decision, but where the board is unable to resolve the matter, it shall, again, forward the complaint to the minister for a decision. Again, it is unacceptable, the state of affairs, this piece of legislation and what it attempts to do is totally disregard the independence of these associations and their right to ensure that they conduct their affairs in a way that they deem fit, not the way that the government deems fit, and most certainly not the way that any minister in his discretion deems fit. And it is for these reasons I cannot support this bill.
I recognize Senator Osmani Salas.
Thank you, Madam President. All right, Madam President, it is no secret that the sugar industry has been faced with a whole lot of challenges. It is no secret that there is disunity among the members, among the associations, maybe even discord. And because of that disunity, it creates a disadvantage for the very cane farmers, especially in their negotiations with the mill that is well-resourced. We want it to function well. The mill is a business, and we cannot blame them for ensuring as best they can to turn a profit for their shareholders. That's their business. At the same time, we want to ensure that the cane farmers are adequately represented, their interests are adequately represented, And that can only happen if there is greater unity among them. In 2015, there was a major amendment to the Sugar Industry Act. Tremendous. And I sought to find out if there was any consultation before that was taken to the House and the Senate. And I've confirmed that there was none. It was rammed through. It was rammed through the House in January 2015. The following day, it was introduced in the Senate, and the following day, it was enacted into law. 3 days. So, confirming again, it was rammed through. An opposition senator at the time, PUP senator, referred to it as, and I'll quote, Madam President, "This is where we are. We've become, Mr. President, less of a democracy and more of a ramocracy, where large policies are being rammed through without proper consultation." This amendment in front of us right now, this amendment would be another major change. And every time there are changes like this, Madam President, it creates uncertainty among the cane farmers, probably even distortions. And we're talking about over 5,000 cane farmers. The largest association represents about 60% of those, and in terms of production, about the same. The others take up the rest. And many of these, not my words, the words of some of the association leaders I spoke to as I prepared for this, recognize that a big chunk of the membership have challenges with their entrepreneurial capacity and also in terms of literacy skills. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to explain every time something changes. Because these members and farmers, for them, the bylaws are their Bible, their constitution. And when changes like these are made, they probably scratch their head and say, so what does that mean for my bylaws that I have tried to follow and understand, and now with a legislative amendment, it just turns that on its head. So what? It creates a lot of distortions and uncertainty. What is of concern to us, and and some of us have said it, and I want to refer to it again, but in January of this year, I gladly supported government's good governance motion. And number 3 of that good governance motion says this: to take measures to reduce discretionary ministerial powers in order to increase administrative efficiency and eliminate where possible political intervention. So, look, I just think, how would the banana industry react if there was an effort to put in something like this in their legislation, or the legislation that governs your organization, colleague Senator Herrera, and there are others like that. Now, it could very well be that intentions are well intended. We also have to accept, look, there are no saints in this thing, there are no saints here. The entire industry needs to be improved. An association has needed to have its elections, has not had up to now, and another one has. We're in the face of a pandemic. We have Omicron, and where does it stop? So what I see is create the opportunity, just like we have in this honorable chamber and the House, where we amended our standing order so that we could have virtual meetings if need be. Things like this should be contemplated. The SICB's role, and a slight maybe correction to something you said, Senator Herrera, is that in terms of the SICB's arbitration powers, I think it's limited to arbitration between the cane farmers and the manufacturer. But where I think legislation would have been good and helpful, an amendment, is to strengthen that board's powers, to also be able to be an arbitrate between issues among within associations, maybe with farmers and their board as well. That I think is not there, and that is the kind of amendment I would have wanted to see here. So legislation cannot solve the issues that the industry is facing. Legislation alone cannot, and we don't want to, because of short-sightedness, create more problems. Now, we should have learned from the missteps of the previous administration in running through important legislation like this and ensure that we don't do it under the current administration in the whole, when we think about good governance. So I would want to offer, Madam President, as I conclude, some unsolicited advice to the administration. For pieces of legislation of this nature, the impact, the consequences it would have, engage with us, man. Do like my colleague right in front of me, Minister Koi, has done in relation to the budget, the Blue Bonds Initiative. Leader of Government Business has consulted with us on a slew of other bills. This one, I at the very least require that. Because while in the House, the government will have its way every single time, that's not a guarantee here. Even though my colleague on the other side, I was always reminded, you want to change things, run for office, man. And I say, no, this Senate here is constitutionally mandated to have its role. And we must take that seriously. So, Madam President, with that I must say that I support the positions of my colleagues that have spoken on this bill. And we will not be able to support this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
President, I am trying to understand the correct position. If I understood it, the senators who took to the floor only object to clause 5 that purports to insert a new section 38A. If I understood the interventions, they were concerned with clause 38A. In light of that, Madam President, I won't speak to the other clauses in the bill. But when Senator Perfit was calling us liars and hypocrites, I didn't take to the floor for his unparliamentary language. No, don't withdraw it. What is said cannot be unsaid. But I was reminded of the words of Lady Macbeth, full of sound and fury signifying nothing. There's a more colorful expression about a crocus bag that is empty, but I won't say it. Or an empty drum, I won't say it. What I will say is this, Madam President. The issues raised by the senators require an answer. Perhaps it is, and I say this with no disrespect, because one may have innocently, and I believe that that is the case with the senators behind me, misread, misinterpreted, or attributed too much power to the new section 38A. But I will try to go through the clause to share with the Senate what I would describe as the correct interpretation of the clause. One senator said it's a grab for power. One senator says it allows the minister to intervene. But, Madam President, let's look at what the clause actually says. The minister does not have any power to use Section 38 on his own. Let's start there. The minister cannot intervene if he wants to intervene. That cannot happen. That was never intended, and that is not what the section provides. So this is not an attempt to grab power by the minister. This section can be relied upon in two circumstances only. The first one, it says where a person is aggrieved. So somebody has to be aggrieved. Someone has to be upset, disappointed, or disagrees with a decision of the board, then that person shall refer it to the minister. If the board has taken a decision and you don't like it, you can refer the matter to the minister. The minister can tell you, I don't like that decision, so I am going to intervene. That is not what the provision says. Goes on to say that that person shall refer the complaint to the board for a decision, but where the board is unable to resolve the matter, it, meaning the board, shall forward the complaint to the minister for a decision. So it is the board or the aggrieved person who is sending it to the minister, not the minister grabbing anything. So if Senator Perfeet read carefully, I need to try quote him on. I said if Senator Perfeet read carefully, and then there's a second part of the equation, read carefully and understood. That's the difficulty. What the clause purports to do, you know me on the grandstand the way me they jump up and huff and puff. So the first point I wish to make, Madam President and colleagues, senators behind me, is that clause 38A1 does not give the minister power to do anything unless and until somebody is aggrieved or the board can't act and they refer it to the minister. So that's the first point. Now let's proceed to see what the rest of the clause says. Where there is a complaint by a member of an association or where a dispute arises between a member of the association and that association or between members of an association, the complaint or dispute shall be reduced to writing and submitted to the board, not the minister, to the board. It is not attempting to say that the minister, one, can decide that he will intervene. He will put in place his own decision and take out the board. No. If there is a complaint by a member where a dispute arises between a member of the association or between members of an association, the complaint or dispute shall be reduced in writing and submitted to the board for a decision.
Senator Murphy,
Madam President,
may I remind you of Standing Order 40?
get myself in this, anyway.
Kindly continue, sir.
I understand when the pangs of hunger set in. Go eat, man. Go eat. Go eat.
Senator
Go eat.
Amon Courtney, may
Go to
we
lunch.
stick to the bill, please?
Go to lunch.
Senator
So the
Michael Perfeet,
The point.
may I remind you of Standing Order 4-0?
The point I make about the second clause is that any complaint, as described, is not to be referred to the minister, to the board. And then, obviously, clause 3, subclause 3, in receiving a complaint or dispute, the board may request documentation or may request a meeting with the relevant parties. 4, the decision shall be given within 4 weeks. I would suspect that subclause 38A1 is the one that objection was raised to, but 2, 3, and 4 on a reading, and on a fair reading, cannot be objected to. Now question subsection 5. Read it and understand it. Where the board is unable to address a complaint or resolve a dispute submitted to it under this section, it, i.e. the board, shall refer the complaint or dispute to the minister for a decision. So the structure is, a person has a complaint, the board is unable to meet, the board is unable to determine a matter, it can refer the complaint or dispute to the minister for a decision. Now, Madam President, I accept that honorable senators who read this and are not schooled in the law would obviously have a concern, and they express them, and I respect that. But I want to make the following points. A decision is a very curious thing in law. There is a big difference, and there are many laws. I can think of the Domestic Banks and Financial Institutions Act, for example, that comes immediately, that provides for an appeal. In other words, somebody makes a decision, you are dissatisfied, you are aggrieved, you have a right of appeal. And when you have a right of appeal, the appeal tribunal or person, the law sets out what that person's powers are on the appeal, which would include, most usually, reversal of the decision if the appeal succeeds. I make the point that this bill does not provide a right of appeal. I make the point, just calm yourself down. I know you're not very familiar with public law. Relax. I make the point, Madam President, that the bill does not make provision for an appeal. The reason I make that point is because one has to understand whether or not, when this matter is referred to the minister for a decision, the question is, what are his powers? Where a law has an appeal, it gives to the appellate body the power to reverse, vary, set aside a decision, or to uphold the decision. Is it that you are hungry? Be quiet, man. Listen.
Senator Perfeet, again, may I remind you of Standing Order 40?
Thank you, Madam President. This bill does not, I repeat, does not give to the minister the power to reverse a decision. It does not give the minister the power to vary a decision or to set aside a decision. It is important, Madam President, because the powers that the board has under the Act, Section 6, are quite extensive. And nowhere in the bill does it attempt to replace or empower or entrust the minister with the power of the board. I emphasize that simply to say this and to respond to Senator Herrera's concern, one of his concerns, that he does not see how the bill as drafted addresses the impasse that I referred to when introducing the bill. Colleagues, you will recall that I said that there were two impasses. The first was the failure of associations to hold elections in accordance with their bylaws. And if I understood the senators, they have no difficulty in principle with the law requiring them to do so. That was the first impasse. The second, which I referred to, was the impasse between the Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association and the Belize Sugar Industries Limited, having to do with the fact that there is a commercial agreement for the purchase and processing and the sharing of proceeds of sugarcane that is about to expire. And the government is strongly encouraging the parties to move forward. President, Senator Salas referred to Section 6(1)(b) of the Act, which reads, the board shall include the following functions: acting as arbitrators when requested in a dispute, issue, or disagreement arising between manufacturers and the association, and issuing decisions which shall be binding upon the parties which requested such arbitration. The point I make is that insofar as there may be a dispute between the association and Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association and BSI, the law deals with it. The law deals with it. So there is no attempt to remove that power and to give the minister the power to arbitrate between them. That is not what the law is attempting to do. The focus and concern of the government is that for some reason, and I am not in the least attempting to pronounce on who is right or who is wrong, it appears that parties are reluctant so far to come to the table, to sit down and to try to resolve the new agreement that is necessary. It is in that context where you see the provision being made where the board is unable to take a decision or unable to resolve a situation, that the matter can be referred to the minister. Having said all of that, Madam President, members of the Senate, every single senator who took the floor this afternoon on this issue recognized the importance of the sugar industry to this country. The 2015 amendments that Senator Salas referred to were very wide-ranging and very substantial. And in fact, was what led to the agreement being signed then, the same agreement I'm talking about. And now here we are in 2021, and we are faced with the same crisis again. What it says is that those amendments were insufficient to resolve the problem in this industry. This is the attempt of this government to move it forward and to try to provide a solution. All the senators representing civil society, the churches, the unions, business community, the labor movement, have indicated to me that they will not support the bill. Based on that, it seems to me that we have a choice. Either we engage and consult, as Senator Salas appealed to us for, to try to find the language that would make the bill palatable to those senators behind us who have the interests of the country at heart, or we put it to a vote, it's defeated, and it goes to the House, and the House passes it again. Madam President, in furtherance of the commitment which we made in January to consult, in furtherance of the commitment to govern openly and try to seek a consensus, I will not ask that the question be put, and I propose to leave the bill in the Senate for consultation. Thank you, Madam President.
Into the committee as a whole.
Committee of the Whole, Senate on Motion and Bills.
Honorable members, in accordance with Standing Order 68A, the Senate will now resolve itself into the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee, a committee of the whole Senate, to consider the motion referred to it, and thereafter, in accordance with Standing Order 5-4, the Committee of the whole Senate to consider the bills that were read a second time. Honorable members, I will now take the chair as the chairperson of the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee, and then as the chairperson of the Committee of the whole Senate. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, the Constitutional and Foreign Affairs Committee has met and considered the resolution authorizing the ratification of the protocol to amend the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, Motion 2021, and has agreed that it be returned back to the Senate for adoption. I therefore move that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that the Honorable Senate, being satisfied that the ICCAT protocol will permit Belize to demonstrate its ongoing commitment to the conservation and sustainable use of global fishing resources, as well as further demonstrates Belize's leadership role in the protection of the environment and careful husbanding of natural resources consistent with government's policies, and in doing so, being in the public interest of Belize, hereby authorizes the government of Belize to ratify the protocol to amend the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, ICCAT, which was first signed by Belize on November 20, 2019. All those in favor, kindly say aye.
Aye.
Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Reporting and third reading of bills.
Madam President, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole Senate has considered the General Revenue Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022 Number 2 Bill, Customs and Excise Duties Amendment Bill 2021, Belize Bank Limited Undertaking, Belize Bank Corporation Limited Operations Vesting Bill 2021, Certified Institutions Children Reformation Bill, Repeal Bill 2021, Juvenile Offenders Amendment Bill 2021, Families and Children Amendment Bill 2021, Patents Amendment Bill 2021, Trademarks Amendment Bill 2021, Law Revision Amendment Bill 2021, and have passed them without amendment. I now move that these bills be read a third time.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day of March 2022, that a bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duties Act, Chapter 48 of the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to rename the tariff column headed EPA with EPA UK to implement the 8th phase of reduction of duties in accordance with the CARIFORUM UK EPA, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, that a bill for an act to provide for the vesting in the Belize Bank Limited of certain business in Belize of Belize Bank Corporation Limited, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, that the bill for an act to repeal the Certified Institutions Children Reform Act, Chapter 121 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, and to provide for matters connecting therewith or incidental thereto, that the bill for an act to amend the Juvenile Offenders Act, Chapter 119 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to repeal the provisions that relate to the status offenses and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, that the bill for an act to amend the Families and Children Act, Chapter 173 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to substitute the term approved children home with the term residential care facility in order to ensure consistency with its use in those laws that refer to residential care facilities, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, that the bill for an act to amend the Patents Act, Chapter 253 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the Deputy Registrar of Intellectual Property, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, that the bill for an act to amend the Trademark Act, Chapter 257 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the Deputy Registrar of Intellectual Property and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, and the bill for an act to amend the Law Revision Act, Chapter 3 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for the electronic publication of the revised edition of the Laws of Belize and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, all be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
The bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending 31st day of March 2022. A bill for an act to amend the Customs and Excise Duty Act, Chapter 48 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition, to rename the tariff column headed EPA with EPA/UK to implement the 8th phase of reduction of duties in accordance with the CARIFORUM UK EPA and to provide for matters connected therewith. The bill for an act to provide for the vesting in the Belize Bank of certain business in Belize of the Belize Bank Corporation Limited and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. A bill for an act to repeal the Certified Institution Children's Reformation Act, Chapter 121 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. A bill for an act to amend the Juvenile Offenders Act, Chapter 119 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to repeal the provisions that deals with status offenses and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. A bill for an act to amend the Families and Children's Act, Chapter 175 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to substitute the term approved children home with the term residential care facilities in order to ensure consistency with its use in other laws than referred to residential care facility and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. A bill for an act to amend the Patent Act, Chapter 253 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the Deputy Registrar of Intellectual Properties and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Bill for an act to amend the Trademark Act, Chapter 257 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to make provision in the interest of administrative and operational efficiency for the registrar to delegate certain functions to the Deputy Registrar of Intellectual Properties and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Bill for an act to amend the Law Revision Act, Chapter 3 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for electronic publication of the revised edition of the Laws of Belize and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Madam President, if I may.
Depending on what?
Well, I've had lunch, Madam President. I'm in a much better mood.
That is wonderful.
No, Madam President, this is December 6th. I don't suspect, unless something happens that we don't know, I don't expect we'll be back here before the end of the year. So just in the event that we are not, I just wanted, on behalf of the members on this side of the House, to wish all members of the National Assembly and yourself happy holidays, and to encourage everyone to drink some nice rum popo responsibly, eat some cake, have fun, and love one another. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone in the country.
Thank you, Senator
Madam President,
Michael Perfeet, Leader of Government Business.
Senator, it's previous. We have to fix this Sugar Industry Act before the end of the year.
It won't come back, madam. I did say that.
Yep.
There was the proviso clause.
A previous and premature.
No, you listened, but you did not understand.
Thank you, Senator, and certainly this may very well be, as you quite rightly said, our final sitting. So I myself wish to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your year of service. I think we did good in our first year. I personally want to thank each of you for sort of holding my hand through this process in my first year. And certainly, I wish each and every one of you a safe, a peaceful, and a joyous holiday season. And don't drink too much rum popo. I'm not quite so sure. I'm not quite so sure about the rum popo, but drink the rum popo responsibly. So thank you all. Honorable members, the question is that the Senate do now adjourn. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The Senate now stands adjourned.
We, thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that, we having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Huh? No, this fell out.
This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mr. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mrs. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Montague, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malauford, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Charles, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Mr. Main, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Mr. Green, Dr. Guy,